Welcome, folks. Today's episode introduces Ann Elliott, who's been in the business of child welfare for over 25 years. Hi, Ozzie Stewart here. Welcome to see the Hard Issues segment of Season 10. Season 10, folks. Thank you for tuning in. On this episode, I'm shining light on Ann Elliott, who now, with over 25 years of working on behalf of children and parents, is on the mission to be an agent of change and reform for the child welfare and family court judicial system. So, important conversation. Please like, follow, share, drop a comment, donate to our membership page, donate to our OTC page, become a member. This gives you exclusive insight into the persons that we are our guests, gives you personal insight to our guests. All right? So I'm going to give you a little bit about Ann. Ann Elliott is a social worker and entrepreneur based in New York. She's a graduate of the City College of New York, where she earned her BA in Sociology, and Concordia College of New York, where she earned her Master of Science degree in Business Leadership with honors in 2017 and received the Young Alumni of Distinction Award in 2019. With over 25 years of experience in the New York City child welfare system, Ann has worked as a CPS worker for the Administration for Children's Services for 10 years and for 15 years in foster care agencies. She has empowered, coached, and mentored women who have lost or had lost custody of their children and teaches parenting skills classes. Ann is a member of various organizations, including the New York Women's Chamber of Commerce and the Supervised Visitation Network. She's a founder and executive director of the Family Support Consultants, which provides supervised visitation services on custody court cases and reunification coaching services to birth parents of children in foster care. A lot of work there, guys. As a chaplain and a board-certified Christian counselor through the National Association of Christian Counselors, she also offers faith-based counseling as requested. In addition to her work in social welfare, like she has time, she is also a founder of Reform CWN, an organization that advocates for the reform of child welfare and family court system in New York. The organization's mission is to be agents of change and reform for the child welfare and family court judicial system. It aims to address the concerns of the Adoption and Safe Family Act, ASFA, which is pro-adoption and expedites termination of parental rights, as well as the system failures within child protective services, foster care, and family court. Important. Reform CWN is dedicated to highlighting concerns such as high turnover of CPS in field offices, illegal removal of documentation that supports parents' progress and compromises their court cases, and financial incentives that compromise the welfare of children in the system and family court. Important. A passionate advocate for change, Ann has firsthand knowledge of the trafficking of children as she was approached to traffic children in her cases by her superiors. She has put her life at risk by coming forward with this information, but knows that she must be a voice for the voiceless at all costs. And she has suffered greatly. Overall, Ann's work in social welfare and advocacy reflects her commitment to empowering and supporting families and fighting against the injustices within the child welfare and family court system. Here is Ann. What are some of the highlights of your 25 years of experience working in the New York City child welfare system? And what motivated you to stay in that field for so long?
Oh wow. I do believe that, I'm a young girl from the Caribbean. When I came here, my mom had told me that she wanted me to be a social worker. She told that to my sister and I because as a Caribbean woman from the Caribbean coming to the United States, and bringing 5 children. It was a social worker that assisted her with pointing her to resources and getting her the things she needs. And so she wanted my sister and I to be social workers, which we eventually did. And so,
That's both of you?
yeah.
Okay.
And so once I graduated college, I went into the field of human services. I took the exam for New York City Child Welfare and I passed the exam. And so I became part of a new agency that was newly formed called the Administration for Children's Services. Before that, it was Child Welfare Administration, but then there was a death of a child fatality, and they split from HRA and became the Administration for Children's Services. And so I found my niche.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a lover of children ever since I was in the Caribbean. I was like my family babysitter. So
Right.
it was the love that drove me to this profession.
What is like one major highlight that you can pull out of?
Oh my God, I do have several. When I started in just a few years, I was given an incentive from Nicholas Capetta of going above and beyond the call of duty
And who's
with
Nicholas
families.
Capetta?
He was the commissioner at the time, the new
Okay.
commissioner. I also got an award from the mayor at the time.
And who was the mayor at the time?
Who was the mayor at the time? I think it was it Dinkins?
Mm-hmm.
I can't recall, but I got a mayor's award when we had the blackout again for going. This was 2003 or four. We had a blackout in the
Mm-hmm.
city for several days, and so I was awarded for showing up and going above beyond the call of duty again for families during that very critical time in our city. And during the almost 30 years that I've been there, I've gotten many awards and many commendations from judges, from attorneys, um, top performer in agencies. I've also, there's a program called the Family Preservation Program. I was responsible for redesigning a lot of those documents that we use to make it more caseworker friendly, very efficient, keeping pertinent information because so much of what we were doing was so redundant and so repetitive. And so that was adapted. I also led a team to be the number one in children being placed with family. Yes, so I led that team. I went to my coordinator and I said, I think we can do this a little different. And so within 10 weeks, my organization team, was number one in the city in foster care.
How many people in that team at that time,
There
average?
was 4 of us on that team, and I was responsible for the kinship filing, which means children go with parents and families. And so I got a call from ACS, my coordinator, and they said, how did you guys do it so quickly? We need her to write an overview of what she did to achieve this so quickly. And so I did the overview and I was invited to an administrative meeting. I was the only case planner there in the midst of all these administrators sharing how I was able to accomplish that.
Men to women.
Uh,
What was in terms of that meeting that you had when you
oh,
in
it
that
was,
room?
child welfare is mostly
Women.
women. We need more men to come in for
Right.
a young man, but vast majority of it was women. And so that was very, very highlight moment for me. I've also did onboarding for leadership for new team. One of my areas that I work, I was requested by the director to do the onboarding for new staff on leadership. And so I trained also in that area. So there were a lot of highlight moments. I've enjoyed every bit of what I do.
So, what led you to found the Family Support Consultants, and how does it provide support to families going through these cases?
Yes, the family support consultant was recently launched within the last few months. It's an organization that's specifically geared towards parents who have their children in foster care. I realized in all the years in foster care, which was about 17, that we underserved them in some way. I found that we did so much for foster parents, so much towards adoption in terms of training, instead of awards, incentives. And there was not much that I saw for parents, and I felt that there was more that we needed to do. So, Family Supports Consultant is an agency that is still developing and evolving. The thrust of that and the focus of that really is to make sure I have something called reunification coaching. So once their child go into care, my role is make sure that they're educated, that they're empowered, that they're armed with knowledge, and become master advocates for themselves. So they don't always get all that information within the first critical 2 to 3 months of a child being in care. So I coach them through that process. And then I have a support group once a month to troubleshoot with them and also to advocate for them.
So you have the family support consultancy, but you also have the Reform CWN. What's the difference?
The Reform Child Welfare Now,
Right.
CWN, is all about reform. It's all about my almost 30 years of observation and experience of systemic failures of both ACS, contract agency, and the family court. And so, with that, I have highlighted where we drop the ball, where we have to be responsible in admitting our dysfunction, where we drop the ball, and also our failures.
What are the top 3 areas of dropping the ball and the failures?
Oh wow!
Because I know there's a lot in there.
I haven't prioritized, but you did mention ASFA.
Right.
ASFA, the Adoption Safe and Family Act, was written 30 years ago, in 1997. I find that to be very pro-adoption, which it states that planning for where a child needs to be needs to happen within 12 to 15 months. It's very difficult to do that when you're looking at families' history and patterns of abuse, domestic violence, mental health, poverty, and all the systemic failures within the organization that delays planning and servicing these families while the clock is ticking. And so we now see where the gaps are. We now see where the barriers are. And I think it's time to amend, to revisit, and to possibly look to extend that time frame to 30 months, which is 2.5 years, to give families more time. We can't remedy their problem that has been existing for years and generation in just a year. And so what I find, that's one. The other part of it is that the second part is that ACS has been very transactional. It means when a child comes into care, we said, go to parenting, um, go to drug program, go to anger management, and we give them a service plan. We said, you do the service plan, your child come home. But we have not done anything transformational, right? And so this is where my agency come in, and this is something that I am pushing also more so for more community-based organization and specifically ACS to become more transformational.
Sounds like it could be a really nice coming together if it was done, in unity and in good faith.
This is what Reform Child Welfare Now. Part of that we're going to be having town hall meetings, which includes the community, ACS, families, so we can keep in touch. So we don't just talk partnership, but we're acting on partnership and collaboration with community and with family. The other is panel discussion. Again, involves community, again, involves community-based organization, grassroots organization for families, that we come together and we problem solve and we troubleshoot, and we can help facilitate that dialogue between ACS, family court, and the contract agencies, and coming together. So these are conversations that needs to be happening
Can you then tell us about a success story of a family or individual you've worked with, either through, the family support or the, and I know it's new, the
Yeah.
CWN, but if not there, then prior to your prior experience?
Oh, wow. There is so much success story.
Give me the one at the top of
Okay.
your mind.
There was a mom who was doing well. She got involved with the wrong guy, was on crack cocaine, couldn't kick the habit. Or
The guy or
the mom, her mother watched her daughter, who was in college, went down. She was on the streets doing crack cocaine, drinking. The mother took her very early retirement in her mid 50s to take her grandkids. Admirable. She grieved for her daughter's life. When the kids were removed, I got the case. And in my casework practice, I try to be very strength based. I'm not the social worker that is just going with a checklist. Did you go to your program?
Right.
Did you do this? You have this to do. I want to know how you're doing. How are you feeling? And so my work as a social worker was to bring back where we started in social work, the humane part of it, right? And so I worked with that young lady, assisted her. I became her cheerleader. I became her coach. I became her mentor while she was in the program. She was very, very bright girl. Um, and so she had to make the hard decision to break up this relationship, because we talked a lot about it, woman to woman. And as a social worker, some days I'm clinical, some days I'm community. You're a woman, you're, we are
You feel it
minorities.
out.
I feel it out. And so we had many discussions. She made the hard decision to get rid of him. She had some relapses along the way, but I was very proud of her because she worked very, very hard. And so we're getting to discharge the children, and she had a major relapse. He came back in her life. I was, uh, while I felt disappointed, I didn't show it. I tried to get her back on track. And so I knew it was not going to look good for her in court. So I said to her, when you go to court, own up to it. Let the judge know you were wrong and you had gotten rid of him. And, I coached her through that process. She went to court, did as I said. The judge listened to her and said, I'm giving you another chance. Because we could have pulled the children back again into care and say, okay, we're stopping. And so she said, Your Honor, I was going to do. So I talked and said, what do you want to do? She went back to school. I helped her fill out the application, financial aid. She started Torah College, and her life went back on track. So, as a social worker, yes, the clinical piece, but I also understand that there are different compartments of people's lives that also impacts them as parents and even life choices. And the wonderful thing about being a social worker is that we wear many hats. We are coaches, we are mentors, we're teachers. And so that affords me the wonderful opportunity to be able to step into some of those areas. And so for me, that was a great highlight because she was such a bright girl. And just to see her go back to college to pursue
You
her
still in touch with
degree.
her, or that was
We
a case
kind
that
of
was
lost touch, but
Okay.
I do have those that stay in touch with me. I have a 6-year-old now. She was 6 at the time, but she graduated to go to high school, and she was taken by a neighbor. But the neighbor always stayed in touch with me about her progress and everything, because she knew how much I felt bad for the mother and what happened.
What are some of the financial incentives that compromise the welfare of children in the system, family court?
Yeah, there is so much. Unfortunately, with ASFA, that brought in also a lot of financial incentives. Um, I think now for a child to go into care, it's a little over $1,000 a regular rate.
What's that, $1,000 a month?
A month, a month. So if you get 2 children or 3 children, that's $3,000. Um, Also, my understanding it's up to $5,000 that attorneys get paid. I've not validated that, but that's what I heard. For adoption, to do an adoption, correct. The more adoption that's done by an agency or a state, the federal government dumps millions of dollars. So everyone stands to earn, not to mention the stuff that goes under the table. I've seen documents of a judge that was taking payments while a case was going on. Money was being sent to her phone. Somebody leaked that. Um, so the incentives there in terms of money, the wealthy who has money to buy favor from the judge, we're talking about high level corruption that goes on in family court. Um, we're talking about a lot of foster parents that came in because the word on the street is you can get $3,000. That builds a house in Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, or anywhere they choose to build a house. Um, the bulk of money that comes in, myself as a case planner, never really see it because we fought so hard for um, pay increase and more so for overtime, which the industry is very aware that we do overtime, but we don't get paid for it. So we work for free. So the money, they're always saying we don't have money, but I have a friend who's been an accountant for one of these agencies for about 20 years. I met her in 2005. She still does the payroll. She said, Anne, trust me, the money is there. They give themselves raises all the time. And the only people that does not see the money are the case planners.
As it
people,
always, right? The
as
laborers.
it's always. So the incentive there in terms of, and sadly, we have also foster parent who works with clinical teams to diagnose the children so they can get a higher rate. And so they will go shopping for a psychiatrist to diagnose these children so they can get a higher rate, go from $1,000 to $2,000. And so, when you're living in low income housing and become a foster parent and you're getting $2,000 to $3,000, the money is flowing in foster care. And so again, wherever you have that kind of a financial incentive, there's always bound to be corruption because people now are moving towards making money.
So you showed us some of the people who are entwined in this black market adoption, intentional trafficking. When you first started speaking about it, what happened to you?
I stumbled on it through a colleague who was trying to traffic a child. And when she realized that I was not a part of it, she began to backpedal because I was giving her the look like, you're trafficking a child. You're actually engaging in a black market adoption. And so she began to stumble and fumble at the fact that I was not part of.
You're not willing to.
I was not part
play
of
that
this
game.
thing that was going on within the organization. And so the second time was at another agency. Again, I was confronted with actually trafficking a child on my caseload. And so again, I refused.
Wait.
Yeah.
You were sought out?
Yeah.
Or you saw?
I was, what really happened, I wouldn't even say a scenario. What really happened was I was called into the office by my supervisor, And she said, someone called the agency and want the 4-year-old on your case. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I've been with this organization 8 years. And when someone calls and want a child, nothing stops us from terminating the mother's rights. Absolutely nothing. And she says, every case planner on this floor has to get with the program. If you don't go with the program, you will no longer have employment here. And I was shocked. I was really in shock. And she said, we had 2 planners who would not get with the program, and they're no longer here. We got rid of them. And she said, the agency attorney will make that call because she's the one that reviews the report before she takes it to court. And so the review of the report has to reflect the decision that they want to reflect to be able to traffic this child. And I was horrified. I went back to my desk. I was shaking. My colleague came over and said to me, Anne, are you okay?
Okay. And this is a 4-year-old child
This
to
was a
be
4-year.
sex trafficked?
I'm not
Or
sure
what kind of trafficking? You're not sure
what
what
kind
kind
of trafficking, but I know this 4-year-old was living with her grand aunt, her grandfather's sister. The home was clean. It was great. She was doing great in the home. This was her niece's child. There was no problem for that child to be removed from that home. The back end, eventually, of the story, this child was seen in the park with her. Whenever she took the little girl to the park, this child was seen in the park by this individual, Caucasian individual, who wanted this little girl. And so the reports were to be rigged. So when another colleague overheard me talking to the one who came to me to ask if I was okay, because I was shaking. I'm being threatened that I was going to lose my job if I don't, do what they want to terminate this mom's right. Another colleague came over to me and she said, Anne, the same thing happened to me. My parent did everything she's supposed to do. And my supervisor rigged the report and they took away her 3 children. I was upset about it. I spoke out about it. I confronted my supervisor about it. And they began to allege that I was over identifying. I was having countertransference with this client. I was too emotional involved. And so when I saw the direction they were trying to take me and my work, she said, I pulled back. And she said to me, stand your ground. And I
Even
said,
though
I
she
will.
didn't.
She didn't. She had children. She she said, stand your ground. And because she heard me, and I said, no, I'm not. I said to the colleague, if they keep pushing this, I'm going to the New York Times about it. And so they began to systematically undermine my work in the system, my emails. They began to do things to kind of write me up. And then they saw that I was extremely adamant about it. So when I went to court on that particular case, I took my report to court, gave it to the attorney. She read it. And she said, Miss Elliott, your report is not reflecting the direction we want this case to go. The plan is we're planning to terminate this mother's parental rights. And so we will not be handing in your
But they don't give you a
court
reason as
report.
to why? I mean, the parent did so and so. The parent is not so and so. There's just
the decisions are very flagrant. They're not hiding it in child welfare. It's very flagrant. A lot of it is bordered on fear for the staff, myself. A lot of it is bordered on you will be blacklisted.
right.
If you go forward, you will not be able to work in this industry anymore.
Right.
They will get the word out not to hire you. So it's costly to you. It's
Right.
costly to your
Right.
career.
Right.
it's costly to the license that you do have and you want to do future practice. And so many left and some stayed and become complicit in the crime.
Right.
And so I realized some of my colleagues was also complicit in the crime of trafficking. It was very, very, very flagrant. You're either in or you're out.
Right.
If you're not in, there will be things that will be done systematically
To push you out.
to push you
or
out
to
or
get
to
you
get you on
in.
board. And I've known some individual that went
So
on
once
board.
they come in, are they part of the AR? Let's put it that way.
In terms of
The money that is circulating
no,
you're
once
going to
you-
be in and you don't get anything for it. Is that the incentive?
Oh, no.
Or you just in
Once
to
you
keep
get-
your job?
Once you get in, you will get the money. Because what happened is there were colleagues that was in child welfare. Like one of my colleagues, she was just doing it for 6 years. And they started me out at base salary of 38,000. And 6 years, she was almost making 50. But she was part of the program. So she got the incentive because the supervisor recommended that she be well paid. So if you're down with rigging these reports, keeping your mouth shut, go with the flow, you're easily bought.
Well, the
And so I was not easily bought.
You said it. You talked about the story about a judge who knew that he was being investigated. Tell me what happens now when the script is flipped. Let's put it that way.
In terms of judges, and this is how I knew, that very same case, my court report was not entered into evidence. And I
Do you
thought,
all guys have a judge as well to go with you or to speak to? Or?
no, just an attorney. Some agencies have an attorney. And so when she didn't enter my report in the court, I went in, and that's when I realized everyone was on board. The judge, the mother's attorney, the child's attorney, and everyone was in there. It was a most eerie, most uncomfortable feeling. I realized, oh my God, everyone is on board to take this child away. And so the judge just went on ahead, do what he was going to do, and adjourn the case. Didn't even ask for the report. She just said, oh, Your Honor, we're asking for an adjournment today. We don't have a report to bring forward. She's holding my report in her hand. And he said, okay, we're going to adjourn. But the way the attorneys were looking at me like I was, the worst thing to happen to child welfare. And I walked out of that courtroom and I said, oh my God, this is bigger than I realized. And concerning that young lady also, my supervisor told me after they backed off, they ran another test of another child 2 months later. Had the same conversation to see if I was coming back on board. And basically, I wasn't. And the same thing happened. Reports were being rigged to take this child, this baby, a little boy about 5 months old. And so, again, they step up the game to pretty much get rid of me. In terms of the judge, I suspected that he was trafficking children.
How do you come to that suspicion?
He was hot out there in the community. When I started being involved in the community of family court corruption, his name kept coming up. And a young lady, a woman who had wrote a book, a woman that was in a battle with him, had him in court for these things, reached out to me. And I said, I just had this feeling about him. And so we had discussion. His name kept coming up that he was trafficking different people, different sources. But as I said, everyone on the outside, it's speculation. But because I'm privy to pre-trial conferences and post-court hearing conferences, I know what those discussions are. I know what rulings look like. I know what rulings should be. And so I went with my gut feeling about this judge, listening to this lady, reading the content online about this judge. And so I put his name out there. And so when I put his name out there, the very week, he was I understand he was in a mental health hospital, psychiatric. He went missing from work.
Wait a minute. Let's line that up.
Yeah.
You put his name out there,
Mm-hmm.
and then what happened
Um,
for him to get to that point?
well, I put his name out there because there was stuff online about him
Right.
concerning this.
Right.
And so, based on the content
Right.
with this woman and my conversation,
Right.
I just stepped in.
Right. But then who saw it, and why would he get to the, to be in a...
Well, the red flag went up for me because the very week I did the broadcast, called his name out. This lady is in some other state.
Right.
I've been in the courts since 1996.
Right.
He's been on the bench for 30 years.
Right.
And I felt he was trafficking to the rich and the elite.
Right.
And I said, you know what, I'm going to step into it. And if anything comes up, I will go back to what's already online.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you put his name out.
Yeah. And
What happened to it?
What happens
who picked
is
it up? And what kind of move was made?
he disappeared off the bench that week.
Just from you putting his name out, somehow he got word
Right.
and then disappeared.
Right, because up until that point, I did about 6 or 8 podcasts. So I was being tracked. There was a lot of buzz
Right.
about me going forward, about me talking about
And
this.
why would your conversation be the conversation that make him make that kind of move?
Because I'm on the inside.
Because you're on this inside.
I'm on the inside. It's irrefutable. Everybody else is speculation. Everybody else out of the system, whether it's advocates or whatever,
Right.
all of that is just speculation. So everybody on the inside feels we're safe.
Right.
They'll never prove anything.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So when I'm in a pre-hearing conference and it's like, we're not giving this kid back. We're not. How can you make that decision in such early and the mom has not even completed her service plan? Right? So I've been into those situations. I've been into a situation where my own family member, my grandnieces, 3, 6, and 9, we're from the Caribbean. My niece got a little heavy-handed with corporal punishment. School called a case in. I went over, spoke to them and everything. The children were given to the grandmother, her husband's mother, but they were trying to get them out of her hand. I tracked this case for the time that it was going on. The worker was new. I told my niece, do not tell them that your aunt worked in the system.
Right.
And I tracked this case and I said, okay, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. When it got to fact finding, they keep rigging the case. They keep adding things. My niece was doing well because I was coaching her. And so when she was on the right track, now they turned to the husband and they started to try to accuse her husband of abuse and all of that. And so his attorney said to him, take your girls and go across state line. Leave the state with your children. He disclosed that to me. I said, if your attorney knows that, there is a plan to take these girls and traffic them. Because once you go across state line, they lose jurisdiction. All they do is said, we have an open case on this family. Could you make sure everything is okay? So for your attorney to tell you, get your girls and go across state line, there are plans in place. So what happened was, I was being poisoned because they infiltrated my housing. Certain staff was coming into my...
So did it start happening after that?
Before I spoke to the FBI, I spoke to the Inspector General that oversees ACS. That was right before COVID. So I spoke to the inspector general, and then COVID happened the following week. And so we were on lockdown for all these years. And so the follow up didn't happen. I spoke to the FBI on a number of occasions. I spoke to our community affairs police because I was being poisoned in my home. My home was being searched. Documents were removed and put back. They didn't, if I have my clothes folded and I have my documents off and I'm come home and my clothing is all ruffled
Right.
and my documents are not in order the way I
Right.
had or in envelopes, they just shove them there. Yes, they were in
know,
my apartment. Some things were taken and never returned. So I had to find strategic places to hide certain things. Um, and again, I was deathly ill many times. The community that I'm a part of, many people were poisoned themselves. Many people were being tracked and followed and monitored. All my electronics are still under surveillance. I have no privacy. There was a time where a recording device was placed in my home, and a friend of mine was the one who found it. And I don't know, we were talking, and she pointed to my floral arrangement, which was not a live one.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, and I said, really? And so we pull it, we took it apart, and we found a microphone. And then we Googled, where people flowers, and there it was, the mic, same type of microphone into that kind of a plastic floral thing. And so, yeah, recordings were put in my apartment. The housing was working. I don't know who they had in housing, but part of my lease is that they must have a copy of my key. So my water was being poisoned, my food was being poisoned, I was being deathly ill. Um, it was just horrible.
Has that let up a little bit now, or
Not at all. In my last phone with you, I talked about the possibility. I've been living in my apartment now 10 years, thinking of moving. And
but
so
the
what
thing is that wherever you go, you know,
is,
it's how you protect your present situation, because that
yes,
follows you wherever you go,
absolutely.
unless you go over state line.
Absolutely. Well, you can't outrun it even if you go state line. A friend of mine, she changed her locks like every month because they keep breaking it and going in her apartment. Um, and so, the safety issue again, when I call the locksmith, they say every lock is pickable. And they will get a locksmith to pick the lock and get into your apartment. So it's now they're smearing the surfaces, everything that I have to touch, the refrigerator handle, my counter, my door handle. How do I know that I get poison? The substance is very caustic, so it burns my tongue, it sears it, the roof of my mouth, my tongue, my throat, and my esophagus. And that burns for about 3-4 days before the burning wears off. So it's very caustic. And then I have the physical, sometimes I have a general physical weakness all over my body. And so it takes some time for me to recover and kind of bounce back. This has been going on now for a number of years. But again, with diet, other things that I do, EDTA, which takes toxins out of your system.
So you're on constant watch wherever you go.
I am
And is that
constant
only in the
watch.
house or out the house?
Outside also.
So when you're traveling, let's say you're coming here and you took the train.
Yeah. In my neighborhood, when I'm going to the stores, I go to different supermarkets. I do go to different stores and I do take different routes. And a lot of what I do comes from the community that I encountered, of things that they had to do. There were attempted kidnappings, people being followed in cars, almost run off the street. As one I told you about, the young man, they were poisoning him. They got rid of the guy who was delivering the water and got someone who was poisoning his water. And so he was getting sick and wasn't aware that the water delivery guy was the one administering the poison in the water. So in this community, we're learning survival.
Right.
Because we're all going through the same thing.
Right.
So in this initial stage where people would say, oh, you're just paranoid. No, because there's a whole community out there
Right.
now from coast to coast that are experiencing the very same thing. One young man, now he's incognito. His name, his whole life is under pseudonyms.
Right.
He couldn't find any job or anything
Right.
because he was so blacklisted,
Right.
living out his car, being homeless, on the run. Another young lady, she's on the run, living in out a car with her mom because there's a bounty on her head to kill her because she was a youth, and she talked about how the children were taken to sex orgies, how they were taken to sex rituals, satanic rituals. She grew up in foster care. And so when she started to disclose these things, they tried to silence her. And so she's forever on the run to be silenced.
Well, I am hoping that you find a way to keep doing what you're doing because it's great work.
Yes.
That you find a way to keep yourself safe because you know you've been living with it for a while. And you know that if you were to move anywhere else, it's just going to be there. So how do you exist within the space that is allowed and still do what you need to do? You know, so that is what I hope for you. And for you guys out there, this is a very, very important conversation. And I've got to say that, I really appreciate you listening, you staying for the next conversation. And I appreciate you for being here and educating us because this is not easy. Your life is not easy. And I want people to know you're one of many, but you're still one that I know personally, right?
Yeah.
And so there, guys. Thanks to Cheese, that's what he's called, and our OTC team, and to you, my audience, for spending your valuable time with us. Again, like, follow, share, comment. Comment, donate, become a member. If you become a member, you'll be part of the exclusive information or conversation that we're now going to have next up on our ITC Inside the Call, exclusive to you only as a member. All right? So please care to share. And when you're on your beat, stay on the sunny side of the street safely. Be health conscious, kind to one another. And don't forget to give thanks for the little and big gifts as we strive through into this beautiful life. See you on ITC.